On this quiet day, the nation pauses to honor for remarkable lives whose stories have now reached their final chapter. Each one shaped a corner of the world in a different way through architecture, through sport, through public service, and through the power of the written word. Their paths never crossed, yet their influence left marks that will not fade. Today is not only a day of loss, but a moment to reflect on what they built, what they changed, and what they gave. As their voices fall silent, their legacies rise, reminding us that greatness comes in many forms, and every life leaves a trace on the world it touches. A quiet sadness settles over the world of architecture today, as news confirms the passing of Robert A. M. Stern. He leaves behind a legacy built not only in stone and glass, but in ideas, memories, and the generations he shaped. Robert A. M. Stern spent his life studying how buildings hold meaning. He believed architecture was more than form or function. It was a way to honor history while still embracing the modern world. His work rose across cities, campuses, and neighborhoods, carrying a familiar rhythm, traditional lines softened by contemporary light. He was born on May 23, 1939, and from a young age, he found comfort in the shapes and textures of the built environment. Teachers later recalled how he studied old city streets with unusual patience, noticing details most people missed. Those early habits became the foundation of a career defined by careful observation and deep respect for the past. Over the years, Stern became one of the most influential architects in the United States. He often said, "Architecture must speak to its surroundings. It must listen before it answers." Colleagues remember this line well. It summarized his belief that buildings should never ignore the stories of the people around them. His designs appeared everywhere from cultural institutions to residential towers, and each one carried his signature balance of elegance and warmth. He blended classical influences with the needs of contemporary life, creating spaces that felt familiar yet fresh. Critics often described him as a bridge builder between eras, someone who understood how history could guide the future without limiting it. In 1998, Stern began one of the most important chapters of his professional life when he became the dean of the Yale School of Architecture. For 18 years, he walked the halls of the school with a sense of duty, guiding young architects with steady encouragement. Students remember him as a calm presence. He listened carefully, asked thoughtful questions, and reminded them that architecture should always start with empathy. Under his leadership, the school grew into a hub of conversation, research, and experimentation. He encouraged students to explore both tradition and innovation, urging them to understand not just how to design, but why design matters. Many of those students later said that his guidance shaped the direction of their careers. His office door, they recalled, was rarely closed outside the classroom. Stern continued to lead his firm, Robert A. M. Stern Architects, also known as RAMSA. The firm became a symbol of his vision, producing buildings that carried a sense of dignity and purpose. Whether it was a home, a library, a museum, or a university structure, the work reflected his belief that architecture should feel both timeless and human. His projects on American campuses stood out in particular. They reflected his understanding of how architecture supports learning, community, and memory. Universities across the country trusted him to design spaces that would shape generations. For many students, the buildings he created became settings for friendships, challenges, and personal growth, quiet legacies in their own right. When news of his passing spread, tributes arrived from all corners of the architectural world. One of his former students wrote, "He never told us what to think, he showed us how to think." A fellow architect added on social media, "His work reminded us that tradition is not a burden, it's a guide." These messages echoed the respect he earned over decades of dedicated practice. His death on November 27, 2025, felt like the closing of a chapter in American architecture. Stern passed away at the age of 86, leaving behind a rich body of work and countless people who learned from him. Those who knew him describe his final years as quiet but fulfilling, filled with reflection, teaching, and the steady continuation of his life's mission. Even in later life, he maintained the same gentle philosophy that shaped his early work. He often said that buildings become part of people's memories. They witness moments of joy, loss, hope, and change. And through that, they become more than structures, they become companions in the stories of those who live around them. In moments like these, his words feel especially true. His buildings remain standing with the same calm presence he carried throughout his life. They hold stories of countless individuals, and in doing so, they continue his work long after he is gone. As the architectural community mourns his passing, many find comfort in what he leaves behind. His life was proof that thoughtful design can enrich everyday experience. His influence can be seen in city skylines, university quads, and quiet interiors that make people feel at home. Robert A. M. Stern will be remembered not just as a designer, But as a teacher, a guide, and a guardian of architectural heritage, he believed that beauty should serve people, not overshadow them. He believed that history should be preserved, not forgotten. And he believed that architecture, at its best, is a form of storytelling. His story now joins the many he helped to shape. Though he is gone, the spaces he created continue to speak. They remind the world that good architecture listens first and then answers with kindness. His legacy stands in every structure that carries his touch, and in the generations of architects who learned under his patient guidance. This is how he will be remembered: with gratitude, with respect, and with the quiet recognition that his work helped build more than places, it helped build meaning. And tonight, as lights fall across the buildings he designed, the world pauses to honor the architect who taught it to see beauty with clear eyes. Tragic news has been confirmed from the baseball world today. George Altman, the quiet but unforgettable outfielder who touched nations, has passed away. His story begins on sunlit fields in the American South and stretches across oceans to the cheering stadiums of Japan. Through every chapter, he played the game with grace, purpose, and a steady heart. He was born on March 20, 1933 in Goldsboro, North Carolina. In those early years, baseball was more than a pastime for him. It was a way forward, a way out, and a language he understood more deeply than words. Coaches recalled how he trained longer than anyone else, staying behind after practice to work on small details others ignored. His determination was quiet, but unmistakable. Altman entered Major League Baseball at a time when the sport was changing. He broke in with the Chicago Cubs and quickly proved he was a player with rare talent. In the early 1960s, he became a three-time All-Star. Known for his powerful swing and reliable fielding, fans admired his calm approach. He didn't need noise to make an impact. A former teammate once said, he let the game speak for him. During those years, he played with a kind of discipline that made him stand out. His at-bats were patient, his movements in the outfield were smooth and almost effortless. Broadcasters often said he looked like he was reading the game before it happened. That level of instinct is what made him special. But even with his success in MLB, Altman's story took a surprising turn. In the mid-1960s, he moved to Japan to play in Nippon professional baseball. At the time, few American players made that leap. Many were unsure how they would be received or how they would adapt. But Altman saw an opportunity to grow, both as an athlete and as a person. Japan welcomed him with open arms. Fans there immediately saw his talent and respected his calm, respectful manner. He became a hero for the Lada Ryans and the Hanshin Tigers, bringing power, consistency, and a deep love for the sport. Japanese newspapers called him a gentle warrior, a phrase that captured both his strength and his humility. Altman often said that Japan changed him. He admired the discipline of the league and the dedication of the fans. In interviews, he spoke about the joy of learning a new culture. He embraced their traditions, their training routines, and their values. He was a rare kind of player who made every place feel like home. One Japanese sports writer shared in a tribute, his years in Japan became some of the most memorable of his career. He hit home runs that shook stadiums. He made defensive plays that turned entire games around. And through it all, he remained the same steady presence, humble, focused, and grateful. Younger players often came to him for guidance. He treated them with patience, offering simple but powerful advice: respect the game, and it will respect you back. As time passed, Altman's influence reached beyond baseball. For American players considering Japan, he became a symbol of what was possible, a bridge between two baseball cultures. His success opened doors for others, proving that talent could transcend borders. When he eventually retired, he settled into a quieter life. He spent time with family, reflected on his career, and stayed connected with the baseball community. Former teammates visited him. Japanese fans wrote letters. Cub supporters remembered him as one of the most steady outfielders of his era. Those memories became the warm backdrop of his later years. News of his passing on November 24, 2025, brought sadness across both countries. He was 92 years old. Messages poured in from former players, teams, and fans. A tribute from a Chicago broadcaster read, "George Altman taught us that greatness doesn't always shout. Sometimes it whispers through years of dedication." A message from a Japanese fan shared online said simply, "Thank you for giving us baseball with heart." His story is a reminder of how far the game can travel and how deeply it can connect people. Altman lived with the same steady rhythm he brought to the field. There was no drama, no spotlight chasing, only hard work, respect, and love for the sport. Throughout his life, he carried himself with dignity. He never boasted about the records he held or the barriers he crossed. Instead, he spoke about the teammates who supported him, the fans who believed in him, and the places that became part of his journey. that humility is part of what made him unforgettable. In the mid-body of his story, the memories come in gentle waves. Long bus rides through American ballparks, the roar of Japanese crowds, the early mornings of practice when he worked alone in the quiet light. These moments shaped him. They built the athlete the world remembers today. Even now, stadiums in both countries hold echoes of his name. The outfield dirt he once ran across remains the same. The stands he played under still rise toward the sky. His influence sits in those places like a soft shadow, steady and unbroken. As his chapter closes, the world looks back with gratitude. Altman proved that greatness is not limited to one league, one field, or one nation. He proved that talent can cross oceans, and that character travels even farther. His life stands as a quiet bridge between cultures, built not with words, but with discipline and heart. Fans will remember his smooth swing, his patient eyes, and the calm confidence he carried onto every field. They will remember the way he respected the game, and they will remember how he inspired players who followed in his footsteps. George Altman's legacy lives in every athlete who finds courage to try a new path, in every fan who learned to love baseball through his example, and in every moment of the game where skill meets humility. Tonight, as stadium lights dim across the nations, his memory stands tall. His journey ends, but the story he leaves behind continues to shine with quiet strength. Tragic news has been confirmed from New York's political circles today. Sidney H. Davidoff, the quiet advisor who shaped decisions from behind the scenes for more than half a century, has passed away. His life's work was rarely seen on television or printed in bold headlines. Yet his influence ran through the city like a steady current. He was born on May 23, 1937, and grew up in an era when New York City was full of movement, change, and tension. From a young age, Davidoff understood how power worked. He watched leaders, listened to conversations, and learned how small decisions could affect millions of lives. Those early lessons shaped the path he would take. His rise began with Mayor John Lindsay, a leader known for his bold ideas and willingness to challenge old systems. Lindsay trusted Davidoff in a way few advisors ever experience. He brought him into the inner circle and gave him the kind of responsibility that usually requires decades of political experience. Davidoff became his administrative assistant, but the title did not capture the weight of his role. Inside City Hall, he was the one who connected conversations, smoothed tensions, and found solutions when the room reached a standstill. People who worked with him said he carried himself with calm confidence. Sid knew when to speak and when to stay silent, one former colleague shared. That's what made him powerful. It was a skill that would define the rest of his career. During New York's most difficult years, Davidoff helped shape policy that touched nearly every part of city life. He worked on issues involving housing, policing, unions, and social rebuilding. He understood that every choice carried consequences, and he approached each one with patience and clarity. He never asked for credit. He never stepped forward for applause. The impact mattered more than the recognition. His name unexpectedly reached national attention in the early 1970s. President Richard Nixon placed him on the infamous enemies list, a collection of individuals the administration viewed as political threats. Davidoff had never chased controversy, and the label surprised many around him. But it also revealed how influential he had quietly become. Being placed on that list did not frighten him. Instead, it showed how deeply he was involved in shaping democratic conversations in the country's largest city. In the years that followed, he expanded his work into law and public affairs. He co-founded the influential firm Davidoff, Hutcher & Citron, a place where legal strategy met political understanding. Clients valued his ability to navigate systems that confused others. Younger professionals described him as a mentor who combined intelligence with warmth. He reminded them that leadership was less about power and more about steady guidance. Throughout his life, Davidoff carried a deep respect for the city he served. He walked the same streets as the people affected by the policies he helped craft. He listened to their concerns. He never forgot that public service was built on human stories, not just government documents. Tributes after his passing reflected that sense of humility. He understood New York in a way very few people do. A current city official wrote, "He saw its problems, but he also saw its promise." Another message on social media read, "Sid Davidoff changed lives quietly." That was his strength. In the mid-body of his story, the memories come through in gentle, steady scenes. Meetings in crowded rooms filled with cigarette smoke and late-night debates. Phone calls about crises that could reshape the city in a single day. Quiet walks home after long shifts when he replayed the day's decisions in his mind. These were the rhythms of his life, steady, thoughtful, and grounded, even away from politics. He was known for his generosity. Friends recalled that he gave advice freely, without expecting anything in return. He had a habit of checking in on people long after their work together ended. Those small acts became part of the legacy people now honor. His passing leaves a space that cannot be filled easily. He represented a type of advisor that is rare today: patient, loyal, and deeply committed to public good. He understood the weight of private decisions that shape public lives. He knew the difference between influence and spotlight, and he chose influence every time. As his story reaches its final chapter, the emotional truth becomes clear. New York is different because of him. Policies he helped craft still guide the city's direction. The people he mentored now serve in leadership roles of their own. The lessons he shared continue to echo in halls of government, where he once walked. Sidney H. Davidoff will be remembered as the advisor who didn't need applause to make an impact. His life shows that meaningful leadership often happens in the shadows, where strategy, empathy, and patience come together to create lasting change. Tonight, as city lights glow across the skyline he helped guide for decades, his memory remains. His legacy lives on in the leaders he shaped, the decisions he influenced, and the city that carries his quiet imprint. One more chapter in its long and complicated story. Tragic news has been confirmed today in the world of journalism. Rachel Emma Cook is gone. She passed away on November 14, 2025, leaving behind a silence far louder than any headline she ever wrote. In the newsroom of a quiet London morning, many paused, computers lay still, coffee cups cooled, and a shared sense of loss filled the air. Rachel Cook's voice, calm, thoughtful, honest, had guided so many through stories that mattered. Rachel was born in 1964 in a modest suburb outside London. From early childhood, she had a notebook in hand. She watched people, asked questions, and wrote small stories about their lives, their struggles, their triumphs. Teachers remembered her as the girl who didn't just observe, she listened. She didn't just see facts, she sensed feelings behind them. As she grew older, that gift found its place. She studied journalism, eager to capture more than just who, what, where, when. She aimed for why, how, and who else. Soon, she made her way to some of Britain's most respected newspapers. In time, her writing found a home at The Guardian and The Observer. She wrote essays, interviews, reports, not just to inform, but to connect. She brought stories from forgotten corners. She gave voice to people whose names you might never remember, but whose lives touched yours. She believed journalism should shine light on truth, on compassion, on humanity. Her pieces often began with a quiet detail, a worn photograph, a trembling hand, a whispered fear, and from there, she built a bridge between her subject and us. She did not shout, she did not sensationalize, she simply told, and in telling, she asked readers to feel, to think, to care. Colleagues still speak of her with reverence. Rachel had a rare kindness in her pen, said a longtime editor. She never wrote to scandalize, she wrote to understand, and readers agreed. On social media after the news broke, one comment stood out: in a world full of noise, her words were calm, her stories were human. Over decades, she covered wars and peace efforts, social upheaval, quiet lives, loud tragedies. She reported from distant cities, from crowded hospitals, from refugee camps, from border towns. She traveled where the stories were, often places most people avoid, and she returned not with bravado, but with empathy. In her later years, she shifted from mere reporting. She began writing deeper essays and long-form pieces. She asked questions many avoided. Why do some lives remain invisible to the world? What does it cost to ignore stories of pain, loss, resilience? Her essays became places of reflection for readers, for the public. She challenged bias, prejudice, apathy, but she always did it gently, respectfully, honestly. She once wrote, "I believe that every person's voice deserves to echo beyond their small circle. What feels small to one may carry the weight of truth for another." That belief guided every piece she published. Her death is a deep loss not just for newsrooms, but for readers everywhere. As the world moves faster, as news becomes a never-ending scroll, her writing reminded people to pause, to breathe, to care. Tributes came quickly. An editorial in The Observer read, "She was a guardian of empathy in journalism." A former colleague posted, "Rachel taught me that a story does not need loud words or glamour. It needs honesty and heart." On Twitter, a simple message summed it up: "Rest in peace to the journalist who listened more than she reported, and showed us what real courage looks like in the quiet aftermath." Many remember not just her essays or her articles. They remember the effect: a tear, a changed mind, a new question, a spark of hope. They remember being asked to see the world differently, with more compassion. Her impact lives on. The stories she uncovered remain in archives. The people she spoke for still carry memory. Young journalists who read her work now hold up her model: listen first, write later, respect the person before the headline, seek truth, but don't forget humanity. Tonight, across a city she loved, Streetlights glow gently over quiet pavements. Somewhere, the pages of tomorrow's newspaper lie blank, waiting for a new voice. But for now, many hope for a voice shaped like hers. A voice that reminded us we're all connected by stories. Rachel Emma Cook may be gone, but her words continue to speak. Her compassion continues to guide, and her legacy of honesty, empathy, and the courage to tell difficult truths remains alive in every reader she touched, every story she told, and every life she helped illuminate.